the greatest of all time. Thank you.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top.
Yo, no, I ain't the type to give up. If I do something, man, I do it till I get what I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something I love. I got a poker face, but honestly, I'm not one to bluff. I flip a switch, never miss, man, I always stay up. Don't let them see you always have a plan to stay tough. This life ahead of you ain't easy, it was built to be rough. But that's what makes a personality, is tragedy, bruh. So keep your head on your shoulders. Now we ain't out here moving rocks, we out here moving boulders. Now we ain't getting posterized, we out here making posters. And we ain't got nothing to hide, we move forward like soldiers. You better wake up for the pay stub, or you'll pay up. Don't make love to the game, bruh, fuck the game up. Change up, rearrange stuff to your greatness. Same us for the way up, play the game, bruh.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top, yeah.
You know I'm always honest, there ain't no way I'll ever stop it.
I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top,
I'm always burning with pain, she like to hurt me and maim. I'm always working to change, but she's still lurking the same. I keep on building a dynasty while the haters be trying me, but they hate from inside.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to a special edition of Unscripted here on the Elite Sports and Entertainment Network. I'll be your host and producer for the show, Logan Landers, and joining me talk about Selection Sunday as well as a early look at the first four games of March Madness. Yes, we are finally here. As always, our stat guy, Dustin Reese. What's up, Dustin?
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Especially if you're a college basketball fan, then it is a great time right now. And it's going to be fun, man. We got a couple days, just a little bit of time left before all the insanity happens. And it's going to be fun. Of course, we're going to be covering it here on all of our social platforms. So be sure if you haven't done so already, give us a follow on all of these channels: Facebook, X, TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, and on LinkedIn as well. Connect so there, drop us a comment, drop us a follow, and just give us give us your thoughts about what you think is going to happen in this upcoming March Madness. So, Dustin, the brackets have been set. It is almost time. We're getting geared up for March Madness once again. We're going to be focusing on the men's side in this, and let's talk about just in general. We'll do a quick look at the first four, dive into all the seedings, and then we'll do a little bit more of an in-depth look at the first four. So first four games on the slate, it's going to be Howard and Wagner. It's going to be Colorado State and Virginia, Grambling and Montana State, and finally Colorado at Boise State. So those are the first four games that are going to be played. It's going to be interesting to see where they wind up. But like I said, we'll just go more in depth about that in just a little bit. But let's talk about Dustin, Selection Sunday, as we know, was yesterday at the time of this recording. And all the number one seeds were released. We'll start there. Obviously, UConn, last year's champs, they were number one. Houston, number one. I know Jay's happy about that one. Purdue and North Carolina. So those are your main four. Were you surprised by those four being the top four seeds?
Yes and no. I think three of the four number ones were pretty much a done given. Houston was pretty much the number one team for a good chunk of the year. UConn was right up there in Purdue. So I think those three, regardless of how they performed in their conference tournament, I think those three were a lock. That fourth number one seed was up for grabs. I honestly thought Iowa State was going to get it over North Carolina because Iowa State knocked off Houston in the Big 12 championship to win the Big 12 championship. And the sad part about that too is Iowa State wasn't even the highest ranked number two seed. So evidently the committee didn't feel very confident in Iowa State, but I think for the first time in quite a few years that I'm happy with the number one seeds because three of the four number one seeds deserve to be number ones. And then that fourth number one seed was kind of a toss up between two teams. So you had to give it to one.
No, I got you. And like I said, a lot of the seeds, you can see why they were picked that way. But let's go in depth now. Let's take a look at who all else made March, who all is coming into this game. So let's just start up top here. UConn will be taking on Stetson. 1 versus 16. My God, that would be insane if Stetson won.
Not
I
happening.
mean, it could happen.
Not happening.
No, I mean, there's always a chance that. I mean,
It's happened once. Not
yes,
happening
yes,
again.
it has. It has happened once. But yeah, we'll see. Let's see. Elsewhere in the East, we got FAU, Florida Atlantic taking on Northwestern. Battles at 8s and 9s. Always going to be a good matchup between those two tight seeds there, you think? So we'll see how that goes. Then you move down. San Diego State's a 5 seed taking on UAB and the Blazers. Auburn and Yale 4 and 13. You got number 6 BYU and DeQuince, who is number 11.
Duquesne.
There you go. I can never figure out how to pronounce that. Number 3 Illinois and taking on Morehead State, number 14. And then let's see, we got 2 more. Washington State taking on Drake, 7 and 10 seeds. Then Iowa State and South Dakota State rounding it out there in the East. So, do you have any early predictions or early favorites you think who could make it to the finals in the Eastern bracket?
As if the Final Four wasn't good enough last year, they gave us 3 of the Final Four teams in this bracket.
That's true.
San Diego State played UConn for the national championship last year. San Diego State also played Florida Atlantic in the Final Four last year. So you pretty much are going to have a Final Four rematch possibly in the first 2-3 rounds. I think this bracket, for the most part, I don't see too many upsets early on. I think Northwestern can beat Florida Atlantic. I think Drake can beat Washington State. But outside of that, I really don't see too many upsets, even though I did pick Duquesne to beat whoever they're playing again, whoever you said that 11-6, I picked them to win. But the team that I have coming out of this bracket is actually Illinois.
Oh, yeah.
I think Illinois, just by the way they've played the final 2 weeks of the season, the way they looked in that Big Ten tournament, this Illinois team is really good. And there's not a lot of people talking about them, especially for the job they've done this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Illinois definitely has a good one. Any upsets you think that could happen in those matchups there? Or any team you think could move on, make a little bit of a run?
If any, I could see San Diego State again, which means it would have to knock off UConn. Florida Atlantic possibly knocking off UConn just because they faced them or these teams are kind of facing each other in the Final Four last year, and they kind of saw a lot of what they're going to have to offer this year.
Right.
Nothing really in terms of a lengthy upset. I think if there is an upset, it would be just that first game, and then the second game they'll go out. When we get to the other brackets, there's other teams that I think are going to kind of be those Cinderella teams this year.
Oh, yeah, of course. And like you said, let's keep it moving here. Let's head on down to our next. Let's go up west. North Carolina, they are currently not facing anyone because that's who's going to be the winner of one of the Final Four games. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So right now, North Carolina has an open slot. Mississippi State and Michigan State, 8 and 9 seeds going at it. St. Mary's and Grand Canyon, 5 and 12. Alabama and Charleston, 4 and 13. Then you got Clemson and New Mexico, number 6, number 11. Baylor taking on Colgate, number 3 and 14. And then let's see here, Dayton and Nevada, 7 and 10. And then rounding it out in the West is Arizona and Long Beach State. We're going to flip it here. Any upsets you see that could happen? Any team that could maybe get a surprise win in the first round or so?
I don't think a 7-10 upset is an upset per se.
No, I wouldn't say so either.
But I do think Nevada takes down Dayton, and this is I feel bad for Dayton because they were always one of those teams that was kind of in either the first 4 games or one of those teams that always got to be one of the last ones in and got put in just the play-in games, and now they finally get a decent seed and they get a tough draw. But the one matchup I'm looking forward to is if Michigan State can win their matchup and they get North Carolina.
Yeah.
Michigan State is 5-0 against North Carolina in the NCAA tournament. If there's going to be a bracket buster on this side of the bracket, I think that could be the game just because of the success that Tom Izzo's had against North Carolina in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good one there. So any favorites you think that could come out in West? Obviously, everyone's going to look at North Carolina as the number 1 seed.
Looking back at my bracket, I do have North Carolina coming out of that side or out of that bracket, mainly because they have the experience from last year and they've had the experience the last couple of years from when they went to the national championship game, and then just the team that they have assembled. They have so much experience, so much postseason experience on that team. I just think that ultimately is going to help North Carolina this year.
All right, no doubt. Let's keep moving. Halfway through it, let's head on over to the Midwest. So you got Purdue As I mentioned, number 1 seed, they're not slated to face anyone at this time. Utah State and TCU 8 and 9. Gonzaga and McNeese, they got 5 and 12. Kansas and Samford 4 and 13. South Carolina and Oregon 6 and 11. Then we go over to Creighton and Akron, number 3 and number 14. Texas is ranked 7. They don't have an opponent at this time. Then our final game here in the Midwest, Tennessee and St. Peter's. So 2 teams that don't have an opponent as of this recording. But how do you feel about the Midwest? Any team that you think can make a big run coming out there?
So this is the bracket that I think is going to have the biggest upsets, and honestly, this is the bracket that I have my Cinderellas coming out of.
Okay.
I think Virginia wins the 10 playing game, and I think they end up going on to beat Texas, just because Tony Bennett is historically very good, and outside of the year that they lost as the number 1 seed, he's historically very good as a first round team. So I think they can upset Texas. If that guy from Kansas, I can never remember his name, the guy that's hurt right now for Kansas, if he's not ready for that tournament, I can see Samford upsetting Kansas, just because Kansas, I believe, is 1 and 5 since their big guy has gone down. But the one team that I have in this bracket in the Final Four as this year's Cinderella is McNeese.
Ooh, okay.
McNeese, 12 seed or not, McNeese is legit. They are a very explosive team. They can score in the 90s every single game. They play exceptional defense, have 3 great guards, have a couple of good shooters. As a 12 seed, nobody wants to see this team.
No.
In my opinion, conference strength or not, I think they should have been a number 6 seed. This team is legit. This team is scary. And if they play the way they played all season, they can beat Purdue and get to the Final Four.
It'll be interesting. Obviously you're going to have an upset some way. You're going to have a team who makes at least a little bit of a run. You heard it here. Dustin's got McNeese going as his Cinderella team out in Midwest. All right, and then let's finish it out here in the South. Number 1, Houston. They'll be taking on Longwood. Nebraska and Texas A&M. Wisconsin and James Madison, 5 and 12 matchup there. Duke and Vermont, 4 and 13. Texas Tech and NC State, 6 and 11. Kentucky and Oakland, 3 and 14. Number 7 seed Florida does not have a team they're going to face off against yet. Then finally, the last game in the South is Marquette and Western Kentucky. So how you feeling about those South brackets, Austin?
I do think James Madison beats Wisconsin.
Okay.
I know Wisconsin played very well in the Big Ten tournament, but they did not play well leading up to the Big Ten tournament. And out of all the 5-12 matchups, this is kind of the one that everyone's pointing to, along with McNeese and Gonzaga, because it's not a favorable matchup for the Badgers when you look at how they play and when you look at how James Madison plays. I think Marquette's got a shot to get to the Elite Eight. I think Kentucky's got a shot to get to the Final Four if they can upset Marquette and upset Houston. But I do have Houston getting to the Final Four in this bracket, and I actually have Houston winning the whole thing this year just because I liked that team last year. The team is playing even better than what they looked like last year. I think this year they finally finish off what they started.
Oh, boy, I know Jay is happy to hear that you got Houston taking everything, taking it in the South, and I know he's pumped for that. That is for sure. But, yeah, obviously some good matchups there in the South region. And, once again, we are just right there on the edge, man, of March. So it's going to be fun to see. But since we got a little bit of time, let's talk about these first 4 matchups that's going to be taking place starting tomorrow on Tuesday, the 19th of March. So let's just go through all 4 games here, Dustin. Let's go out first. In the West, we have Howard and Wagner. How are we feeling about that? What are your thoughts?
Well, this is Wagner's first trip to the tournament since 2003, so it's been quite a while since Wagner's gotten in there. Howard's kind of been one of those teams that's kind of gotten in a lot more frequently now just because they're finding ways to win the conference tournament. Don't really know much about either one of these teams, so I really don't care who wins this game because I think no matter who wins this game is going to get curb stomped by either North Carolina or Purdue, whoever goes there. But I'm just going to give the edge to Howard just because they have more experience.
Yeah, when I'm looking at CBS here, just trying to get a little cheat here about who all these teams are and just how things could play out. So looking at these 2 matchups, Wagner 16 and 15 on the year, Howard 18 and 16. So not a whole lot of a variance there for the most part. That's why both these teams are currently 16 seeds. A lot of people are so the spread is the Howard Bison are under three under. So we'll see. Over under is 128. But looking at this team, looking at these guys, so the Seahawks, which is in Wagner, they're first in the NEC in scoring defense and also opponent 3-point percentage. So looks like they're a tight defensive team. It seems like their top player is going to be Melvin Council Jr. Averages 14.6, 5 and 5.7 rebounds, and also 1.4 steals. So that's the guy to watch out for. And over for Howard, you got Bryce Harris, who's a really good player as well. 6'4", 16.6 points, 7.5 rebounds, and also 1.1 steals. And also, he scored 20-plus points in 11 games this season. So, could be some guys to watch out for. But I think just looking at these two teams, like I said, Wagner, first time they've been there since 2003. And that's the thing, especially when you look at March Madness, you don't know if you want to go the team who's favored offensively or defensively. I mean, it kind of goes back and forth for me every year, every game or so, just because it's so hard to predict all these games. But I think for me, man, I might have to go with the team who hasn't been there in 20 plus years, and I might have to go with Wagner getting in there. But like you said, I think this might be a one and done for them. That whenever they get the win and move on, I think that might be it. But we'll see what they can do. All right, heading on over, man. Colorado State and Virginia. I'd just say it is very odd to see Virginia in this position. I don't know about you.
I mean,
I'm just saying in terms of
they had a good year in the ACC this year. They finished third in the ACC, but the ACC had a historically down year this year. So I guess you can kind of take away what you want to take away from that. But Virginia was not very good in non-conference play this year, which was actually very surprising because Tony Bennett has been one of the better coaches when it comes to non-conference play. I do think Virginia deserved better than a 10 seed. I think they should have at least gotten like a 7 just to kind of get out of this play-in matchup. But just the way that Virginia plays defense, I think it's going to be just too much for Colorado State to be able to deal with. Just that slow zone defense, kind of grind it out, low-scoring games because not a lot of teams can play that style. I'm going to go Virginia in this just because I think Virginia is going to come in with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, knowing that they are a better team than kind of what seed they got.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Virginia, they are, I would say, known for being a heavy favorite or a big player in March Madness. You always see them either, a couple of years ago, they were a top seed that they've make it far in March. But, like you said, it's not like they've had an awful year, but it's just the way the luck of the draw is sometimes, that it can be tough. And that is what Virginia's had. And I'm with you on that. I think that when you look at that team, when you look at the experience, obviously, with the coaching staff and whatnot, that I think it's going to be tough for a lot of teams to beat them just because of that pedigree that they have. But I would say overall, I mean, I'm not going to call Virginia a Cinderella story. I wouldn't say, even though they are a 10 seed, because when I think of Cinderella, I think of like the small unknown teams, the Loyola Chicagos of the world and whatnot. I don't think of Virginia, the big powerhouse, the big name school out there in the ACC. So I can see Virginia having a nice run at it, all in all. All right, let's keep it moving, man. We got 2 more games left on the slate here in this first 4. Grambling and Montana State. So how do you see that one shaking out? 2 teams who don't really get a whole lot of coverage.
See, I'm going with Grambling State on this one. Their first ever NCAA tournament. Obviously, whenever you make that tournament for the first time, you have so much more energy. You have just so much more enthusiasm to be there because you've been working so hard to get there that a lot of time it's that momentum alone that can carry a team just because they're riding such a high just to get to that tournament that the other team they're going against can't match that level. I like Grambling State. I mean, Montana State, I think, is a better team, but just the whole being at the tournament for the first time and kind of using that to their advantage, I'm going to go Grambling.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you look at Grambling, It's their first time ever being here. So congrats. It took them long enough, right? They finally got it. And I know that they're wanting to make the most of it, obviously, in their matchup. And then Montana State, we talked about their time in football this past season, and obviously it's translated pretty well with basketball. They're right there on the bubble in terms of if they'll get in or not. But I think I'm going to have to agree with you, man. I think that I want Grambling State to win only because, like you said, it's their first time ever being here. I don't want them to be a one and done. And for Montana State, like I said, they got a good program, but I think a lot of people are hoping secretly that Grambling State can get the win. Like I said, their first ever time coming to March. So we'll see what happens in just a few short days. And our final game here, man, number 10 Colorado and number 10 Boise State representing the South. So how do you see that one shaking? Two teams you don't really think of in terms of basketball per se. We also think of them as a football school, especially Colorado nowadays.
Yeah, and honestly, I think this is going to be the most exciting of those first four games. Boise State was talked about a lot yesterday as a team that deserved to be ranked higher than where they were. Same with Colorado, because both of them had really good regular seasons, but they did not have a good showing in their conference tournament, and because of that reason, I think their seeding was affected by it. Both teams like to score points. I think Colorado averages, close to 80. Boise State, I think, averages over 80 points. So I think offensively it has the capabilities of being a pretty high-scoring game. This one's a toss-up to me, but I do like Boise State just because I think Boise State had a better body of work more consistently during the regular season than what Colorado had.
Yeah, it's this one, like I said, I think this one will be a tight game, all in all. And you could, like you said, I think Boise State's had a good year. Colorado, they've had a solid season as well. And I mean, like you said, this one I could think you could kind of go either way with it. I think there's not a clear-cut favorite. So I'll go with Colorado Buffaloes. I think that they'll get the win in this one and head on out to the South and see what they can do in March. All right, so Dustin, we got a little bit of time here left. So I want to get your thoughts because this has been kind of a hot topic in college basketball here recently. It came out that a few teams have decided not to participate in the NIT tournament, which is, as we know, the teams who don't make March Madness. That's kind of like a compensatory tournament that they could be in, just to keep the guys playing and to, win their version of a trophy.
Yeah.
So, do you think it's kind of a two-part question? Just what are your thoughts on teams not accepting the invite? And you think it also has to do with the NIL money now? Because we see that more and more players in bowl games in college football, how they're sitting out the lesser-known ones. So just give me your thoughts on that.
I think a lot of teams opt out. Before we get into that, I just want to say there are two teams one team that accepted the bid to the NIT that should have been in the NCAA tournament, and then one team that did not accept the bid that should have been in.
Okay, who you got?
I think Wake Forest should have made the field. Some of the wins that Wake Forest had this year, they beat North Carolina, they beat Duke, they beat Virginia. All three of those teams are in the NCAA tournament.
Right.
But yes, Wake Forest had a couple bad losses mixed in there as well, but they were still a very solid team most of the year. And then you have Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh declined the NIT, but they finished fourth in the ACC this year and had 23 wins. So when you look at things like that, I've never understood how the committee decides to put what teams where and what teams not in the NCAA tournament, mainly because you look at the criteria that the NCAA goes by. Wake Forest and Pittsburgh have better criteria than some of the teams that they've allowed in the tournament, but yet they don't get invited to the NCAA tournament. Other teams do. And when you go, and I think that's why a lot of these teams are opting out, because it's like, if you're going based on the criteria that you put in play, we meet that criteria. So why are we not getting an invite in a team like Dayton or a team like Utah State that come from smaller conferences that don't have the same criteria as us are getting in?
Right. And also, just to interject real quick, the teams that have decided not to play is St. John's, Oklahoma, and Pittsburgh. Those are the main three who have decided they're not going to – they're just saying, we're done.
Well, for St. John's, it doesn't surprise me because Rick Pitino has never, ever accepted an NIT bid. Even going back to his days at Louisville and like all the other schools that he coached at, whenever he got invited to the NIT, he never accepted it. So that doesn't surprise me. Indiana also declined. And
Right,
Indiana,
okay, yep.
Indiana was thrown in there too, which kind of surprises me a little bit, especially when you look at how their season's gone, but at the same time it doesn't. Pittsburgh declining it, I think, was the biggest surprise to me, because if they would have accepted it, not only would they have had a number 1 seed, but they would have been the miles on favorite to win the NIT. And if you win the NIT, you get money anyway, so that's kind of money that you're taking away from the school. I don't think it has to do with the NIL money, and I think a lot of teams and a lot of universities are kind of the way I feel, that, in my opinion, these conference tournaments are a joke. How if you win your conference tournament, you get the automatic berth to the NCAA tournament.
Right.
So by that thought process, you could have a team that is 8-20 that went winless in conference play all season long, but all of a sudden they get hot for 4 days and win the conference tournament. And because they won that conference tournament, they're taking a bid away from somebody that actually has a larger body of work more consistently.
No, that's a good. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if conference play means that much, award the teams that win the regular season conference tournament with the automatic berth, because they had to go through an 18 to 20 game conference schedule. They had to do the body of work for a longer period of time. And once you award, what is it, 34 conferences? So you give 34 berths to the conference champions. Then after that, the remaining 34 teams, then you go by your criteria. Because if you look at just some of the records of these teams that are in the NCAA field, and then you look at a lot of the teams that are in the NIT, a lot of these NIT teams have better records than teams that have made the NCAA tournament, and the only reason they didn't make it is because they didn't win their conference tournament.
No, that's a good point. I'll do a quick rundown here of the games in the NIT. We got Seton Hall, St. Joseph's, LSU, North Texas, Providence, Boston College, Princeton, UNLV, Wake Forest, and App State, Georgia and Xavier, Virginia Tech, Richmond, Ohio State, and Cornell. Then we got Utah, UC Irvine, Iowa, and Kansas State, UCF, South Florida, Villanova, and VCU, Cincinnati, San Francisco. Then we have Bradley and Loyola Chicago, Butler taking on Minnesota, and finally Indiana State and SMU. That is going to be in the NIT, which also kicks off tomorrow, March 19th. So it's going to be interesting, Dustin. It really is, man.
The team you just mentioned, Indiana State, for example, they're 28-6.
Yeah.
They were a top 25 team pretty much the entire season until the last week of the regular season. How are they not in the field just because they didn't win their conference tournament?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's it seems like every year we always get these where it's, man, how come this team made it but this team didn't? And we're always going to have those debates. That's just how it is here. That's just how it is with March. And
but like even Princeton teams too. Princeton was 24-4. They actually finished the season number 21 in the country.
But yet the 21 best team numbers wise, ranking wise,
but yet
in the country. But yet not as good as 64.
They lost their conference championship game. They didn't even lose like early on in the conference tournament. They lost their conference championship game to Yale. But because they didn't win their conference, you take a team that was ranked 21st in the country at the end of the year and kick them out of the tournament. That's the one.
Yeah.
Like Indiana State, it is what it is. But the Princeton one is the one that makes no sense because
you lose one game.
24-4. You go undefeated during the regular season in conference play. You lose one conference game, and it's the conference championship. You still finish the year in the top 25, but yet you don't make the field.
Yeah, it's a lot of arguments to be made for a lot of teams as to why they should be in, why they shouldn't be in. All I know, man, is that March is finally here. Spring is just a couple days away, and March Madness is about to go down. It's always fun, man. It's always fun to watch and see which team's going to go all the way, who's going to get upset, and everything in between. So always a fun time, man. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great March. Well, Dustin, I appreciate it, man, coming on the show, talking about Selection Sunday, the first four, a little bit of NIT as well thrown in there. Always a fun time, my friend. Appreciate it as always. I'm your host, producer, Logan Landers. Guys, if you like the video, give us your thoughts on Facebook, on X, TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, and on LinkedIn as well. Connect us on a professional level. And if you'll come and, just be a part of the network, if you want to come and just comment on shows, those are the best platforms to do so. Once again, for Dustin Reese, our stat guy, I've been your host, producer, Logan Landers. Guys, enjoy your March and go and watch some basketball. We'll talk to you later.